One of the key music videos I ever worked on was Knock You Down next to Carrie Hilson. And there's this moment in the music video where we build out and we see Kanye West, is sitting next to Carrie Hilson. And
Yeah.
over the course of the music video, he's starting to fall backwards. We cut away and we cut back, and it's building this tension. And in this moment where everything's built in the music video and in the music, and it gets this pinnacle moment where Kanye West shatters. And in that moment in Las Vegas, that's when the entire club went crazy. You're just feeling all the emotions come together. All sense of reality disappears and you feel like you're actually absorbed. You believe the characters, you're in the movie. And that's what we do for go-to-market. So they actually feel and believe everything that you're showcasing to them.
Normal thinking and normal execution brings normal results. Outlier thinking and outlier execution brings outlier results.
We live and we breathe thinking outside the box. I live my life breaking the rules to see what happens. And then there's this moment. And I remember the first time I've ever in my life seen.
Welcome to the ABCs for Building the Future podcast, where we bring on founders, entrepreneurs, leaders, researchers, and scientists who are working on big things with big stories to tell. It just so happens that today we have on a friend of mine, Darren, who is in the business of building storytelling software, which I think is so cool. Darren, could you introduce yourself, where you're from and what you like doing for fun, and then a little bit about that storytelling software business?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Darren Fanton. I grew up in the Bay Area, California. Lived in Los Angeles for 17 years. Of course, the storytelling really took off then. And then I moved out to Colorado about 2018 or so. And the reason is because I like to do things that are fun to balance my world in film, television, storytelling, and I'm always in front of the computer designing and animating. So I like being outside. It gets the creative juices going. It gets me, it gets the blood flowing, and I find if I spend 20, 30 minutes outside, it's a whole different world when I come back and I sit in front of the thing that I'm focused on. So that's mountain biking, hiking, outdoor games with the kids, all the
Cool.
dad stuff that you'd find, especially for
That's great.
Coloradans out here.
That's great. No, I feel like I have this concept in my mind about happiness points, like for time, like you spend your time and effort
Yes,
on
I
something,
love
you
that.
get happiness points. And nature to me brings back the most happiness points, like just period.
Yeah. It's like a
Um,
superpower, right? It's like a surge of happiness points, and when you apply it back to work, it's just incredible what it can do for you.
yeah, for sure. And then talk a little bit about ScreenSpace and that, just how you got even into that at a really high level. And then we'll get into the
Yeah.
details later. But
Yeah, so it goes back, throughout my whole journey, right? I started off as a kid. I loved storytelling, and it got me
yeah,
into film and television. That's what pulled me into USC cinema school
cool.
back in the day. And I was always drawn to the Hollywood lights, the idea of telling stories that are just ingrained and hardwired in your brain. And I was a very visual person. I love being creative. I built my first website on Flash. I don't know if anyone remembers Flash in high school, and it was all animated, and it's kind of what ScreenSpace almost became today. Shot my first feature film in high school, so I was really in the storytelling world, and moved down to Los Angeles and started a video agency where we focused on visual storytelling through motion design and visual effects for television and film, and for B2B marketing. And where ScreenSpace came about was, I love being in film, but we hit kind of a ceiling, right? We've got a captive audience. I'm working on Dancing with the Stars and Britney Spears music videos and
Wow.
Academy Award winning films. And so I felt like, I loved what I did, but I felt like there's more to storytelling. I could bring it somewhere else. And what I found with our tech clients is when we create promo videos or content for them, that their audience is the worst audience possible, right? They don't want to be there. They're confused. They're overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
you as a marketer or sales rep, you have to find a way to get them to ignore all the distractions in the world and focus on your thing and want to learn more from you and your brand, and even discover a possible solution to a sharp pain that you're feeling, whether it's something you feel
Mm,
now or you're actively looking for. And it's that challenge that pulled me into this B2B marketing and sales, go to market space. Initially, the hypothesis was make video more accessible to B2B go to market teams so that they can build their own content. So
yeah.
ScreenSpace's first iteration was a productized version of our agency. We took all the technology that we built, our IP that we built in-house to streamline and scale our own services doing 3D animated, high production quality promo videos. And we
Okay.
put that online so that, and made it self-serve. So companies can go in and upload their content, build 30,
Cool.
60-second, kind of like Apple style iPhone commercials with music and voiceover and beautiful lighting and camera
Yeah.
movements and all the things. And that was iteration one of ScreenSpace. Um, since then, what we've discovered is again going back to the audience, right? They are confused. There's a lot of content out there,
Yeah.
and it's one thing to be entertained by content. It's another to entertain and motivate someone to want to spend time with a sales rep or spend time
Yeah.
learning a new product that they've never seen before. And there's other options that they might, they're trying to battle their time. And so that's where ScreenSpace evolved into where it is today is a choose your own adventure interactive journey of an experience that's hybrid video, images, interactive content, 3D animation, and it's
Cool.
designed specifically around the whole idea of storytelling, right? Of putting the audience in the seat of the hero, almost like a video game, right? You get to
Yeah.
pick
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
persona, you get to
Yeah.
pick, the use case and the journey and go on this journey where you can, explore how you can actually solve a big sharp pain that you have. And that's where ScreenSpace is today. And we started off we shifted from video into more of a product tour type of solution. And now, big shift, and you'll see this in our a big campaign with our launch coming up in January, is moving into that whole idea of thinking outside the box. So
Cool.
ScreenSpace has evolved and our customers has pulled us into a storytelling world where we're not just showing the product story, we're showing interactive case studies, time to value, everything that a buyer needs
Oh,
to
wow.
visually see, touch, and feel where they are today. In other words, feel that pain
Yep.
and then see where they need to be and actually feel that journey all right then and there on your website or inside your link to get there. And that's that storytelling of how we've pulled everything that we've learned from, glitz and glamour of Hollywood into this thing that someone can get immersed in. And we call this a transformative moment in film where someone gets so immersed in a movie they all sense of reality disappears and you feel like you're actually absorbed, you believe the characters, you're in the movie. And that's what we do for go to market is we want your buyers to actually have that transformative moment right on your website so they actually feel and believe everything that you're showcasing to them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love the blend of how you got into storytelling early and then got into film. We're working in Hollywood. And then did you say you worked on like Britney Spears or did I hear
Yeah,
that
we
right?
worked on a bunch of but yeah,
Tell me
yeah, carry
more
on.
about I bet people would find that really interesting.
Yeah, for yeah, so I actually, going into the whole idea of visual storytelling, I started directing while I was still in college. I was the frat brother that didn't show up to any of the parties or any of the events because I was on set shooting a film or a music video or something. And I
Wow.
got pulled into the music video world because I wasn't really into dialogue. I wasn't into, character interaction. I love telling stories visually through
Well,
an environment, through cinematic techniques, whether
yeah.
it's, through the film, lighting, the talent that comes together to evoke an emotion. And that's where music videos, I kind of got pulled into that world. We did, a lot of Angels and Airwaves music videos. We did Britney
Wow.
Spears. I can, it's quite a bit of a list. We did a lot of
So
Kanye West stuff back then. And,
really? Wait, well, name like a song like Kanye
yeah,
West.
so the Carrie Hilson so actually one of the key music videos I ever worked on was Knock You Down next to Carrie Hilson. And there's this moment in the music video where we build out and we see Kanye West, is standing next to Carrie Hilson. And
Yeah.
over the course of the music video, he's starting to fall backwards and slow. We cut away and we cut back, and it's building this tension of what's going on here. And then there's this moment, and I remember the first time I've ever in my life seen the payoff of something that I worked on, where actually I see an audience absorbing my content. Was I was in a it was in Las Vegas at a club, 1,000 people. You just lost your picture frame there. 1,000 people in the room, and they had these screens up, and they were playing the music videos of the songs that they were playing. And this music video came up on all the screens, and so everyone's dancing, and in the moment, I'm just like, oh, that's kind of cool. And in this moment where everything's built in the music video and in the music, and it gets this pinnacle moment where Kanye West shatters. And in that moment in Las Vegas, that's when the entire club went crazy. And it was at that first moment that I got chills. I was like, and this was a music video that we signed on at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, and we had to deliver by 4 a.m. that night. Right. This is Hollywood, right? So it's very fast turnarounds, super fast, right? And so we had to conceptualize the idea. We were on set shooting it in New York to prep for it, but it was supposed to go to another studio that wasn't pulling through. But at the 11th hour, we were brought in to finish it off. And that shot, that moment became a very big moment in music videos, because it was storytelling, right? It was building each shot, everything was building on top of each other till you get that payoff. And that's what I coach with my clients.
Is that the transformative moment? Is
That's
that
exactly. That's actually the transformative moment. Exactly, is when you feel it, and you're just feeling all the emotions come together. Um, and that's what I coach with my clients is, that is, you don't want to just give the payoff, right? If we just had them shatter in the first shot of the music video, it could be cool, but there's no benefit out of it. You're not going to remember it later. It's that build and connection and getting people to start to lean in and see, what's going to happen next. And you'll see that kind of carry through all the videos that I worked on, the shows, the Dance with the Stars. We did a lot of work with them, Fox. And so everything that we've designed was that kind of vision, and it was all visual of how do we start, with something that's small that gets people to want to learn more about it. And kind of like cookie crumbs, that's going to pull them in more. And then you get them to that right moment, and they hit that aha moment. And then you just, and in the space now, you give them a book a demo button, and boom, you're in. Right.
then
Yeah.
conversion rate skyrockets if you get it right. That's so cool. Thanks for sharing about your early career and how you got into storytelling and even teaching me something new, like that transformative moment thing. I could think about times when I've been so immersed, but I never had a name for that. But there's certainly that feeling. And that's so cool to that you coach clients on like, really build up the tension into that moment for go to market teams. That's super cool. And it's cool how you went from Hollywood, like bootstrapping an agency into, oh, okay, let's like try to democratize the ability to
You want to
storytell
unpack
your
that? Yeah.
roles. Like, well, actually, I have one fun question because we just got into it, but I had planned this one question. So I want to ask this. Then I would love to get into that. If your life was a book, and it sounds like there's a lot of life so far, even in the first 10 minutes of this podcast interview, what would the title be and why? And we don't, at this point, it's been 10 minutes of Darren's life and it's already like,
All
oh,
right.
Britney Spears.
I-
Like,
l-
wait,
let's
what?
let's shift that back to the audience. What would everyone else? What would the title be for?
Actually, I would love, yeah, if the audience is hearing this, email me, send me a post or send Darren a post about what would the book
What
title
would you
be of
title
what
that?
you've heard so far.
I
And then
love it. I've
pause.
got an idea, but I'd love to hear. And
Yeah.
and and to throw a twist in it all, right?
Yeah.
So, there's everything from storytelling in backyards, with shenanigans with my family,
Yeah.
to Hollywood glitz and glamour, to B2B marketing and sales. But the one key about this book is it has to be a double feature, because
Mm,
the whole
okay.
story that I've told,
Yeah.
standing right by my side, has been my identical twin brother. So he was my co-founder
Ah,
with my agency in Hollywood. He's my
Yeah.
co-founder today. We've actually only worked together our entire lives. We've never been a W-2 employee of any other
That's
company.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
from day one. So yeah, double feature. This is
Gotta be a double feature. It's gotta be. I
well,
wonder if there are specialist like writers that work with people that have this need, like a twin. Uh,
you
like
know,
we don't do one biography, we do two. That's our specialty.
it's funny because everyone's always saying, "Oh man, if only I had a twin. If only I had a twin." Well,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
a twin. It's if only you had a triplet, right? There's always only so much you can
There's
do
always
in your.
one more.
There's always more you can do. There's always more, and
Yeah,
that's what's really kind of brought me into the go-to-market space from film. Is I always felt like there's got to be more. I'm just doing more content that
more.
beautiful, people love, that inspires people, but I knew there's got to be something to this idea of storytelling that's like ingrained in us that I can do more of. And of course, I definitely jumped at my parents' stress levels when I told them, hey, we started our own agency. We bootstrapped that. We got to the top. And guess what? We're starting over in the startup world. And here we go.
Wait, okay, there's so many questions going through my head of that part of the journey, and this podcast certainly is about unpacking, like, what are the behind the scenes, like, journeys, big stories, you know? This is really meta because it's a big story about creating a way for other people to tell big stories. Like, that's so cool. Wait, so you obviously love storytelling. Could you talk a little bit about you and your brother, you know, the parallel of like that story of do you both
Yeah.
are you both super into it at the same time? Like, how did you even think about starting an agency? And then when you were at the point of, hey, let's go into tech startup world, like what was that thought process like? I'd love to know.
So I don't know if it's because we're identical twins, but we've always been on the same page. I don't know if it's like we got some telepathy thing that everyone talks about, but I, don't know if I really do have. We have very different personalities, which helps. But we are very passionate about the same thing. And from the beginning, we started in middle school, right? We got our first copy of Photoshop and we started collaborating on, initially it was, flyers for, for my mom's book group and, evolved into, doing all the content for our high school in the Bay Area. And we've always been by each other's side. And I don't know if it's because of that journey that we've learned from each other, but what I know today is what we're capable of doing, being identical twins, having the same passion, the same experience, the same background, and also being smart in that in college. I went to USC, so I'm a little bit smarter, and he went to UCLA.
You got
Now
rivalry, right? Like you
we
just
got the whole rivalry.
shout out to you.
Yeah, the Bruin. No, and it was actually great. We loved being rivals. He would sneak into my classes at USC. I would sneak
Love
into
that.
his parties at UCLA. The people were better at UCLA, but I hope I hope my friends aren't only watching this now. But we discovered in college when we started our agency, I think it was sophomore or junior year, that we needed to complement each other. We couldn't step on each other's toes, but we loved everything, right? I loved building very intricate 3D animated environments and moments that would take a lot more time and more back end work. And I also loved slightly more, in fact, a lot more eventually, is working with the directors, working, what's the final look, what's the end of motion and getting there. And we found, what he learned at UCLA, what I learned at USC, we started to complement each other. We knew where we lived. We started to, give each other the areas that we own. And it turned out to be a really good pairing and a good relationship in that I specialize in the storytelling and client facing content in the audience. And he specializes in everything to get me there. Right. So my twin brother owns
Cool.
ScreenSpace, the product, the design, the
Yeah.
flow, that's his world. And I'm kind of everything else. Right. And so we work really well together. If, I can talk to him about the strategy and, coming out of a customer call and
Yeah.
what we need to start, to build and the trends. And then he can come back and say, well, here's a better way to visualize that, but get the same end goal. And then he would go and build that into the product. So it's funny because what we did in film was so similar in that he was in the back end doing the harder, more grandiose content for our clients. And we always work together on every single
Yeah.
project. We've never been a credit on a film or anything where
Always been
we were next to each other.
co-directed. Where cool.
Yeah. And so that translated from, me being on the more the directing, creative director, client facing side and into the startup world, it's the same, right? He's in the product and I guess you'd say the face of the even though we
Yeah.
have a very similar
Yeah.
face. Um,
That is true. That is true.
but what I can say, and I think this is important for this audience here is, we have a unusual benefit in being twin brothers, not even just brothers, but twin
Where
brothers that
where
we have incredible trust, like undeniable trust in each other to the
agreed.
point where we often get in great, heated conversations about our ideas and strategy and where we want to go with either ScreenSpace or a specific and we can go back and forth, but we unleash everything. We're super transparent. And 5 minutes later, we're best friends again, right?
Yeah.
And it's that transparency that allows us to learn so much. We break down each other all the time. Like if you have an idea, you kind of want to hold it close to yourself and say, no,
Yeah.
this is right, right? Especially as a founder, you get
Yeah. Oh,
have you have, and in some ways, it's really important, especially when you're working with investors and you have a very strong vision. You need to hold on to that, right?
mhm.
But
Definitely.
when it comes to other elements that you are holding strong to, but they're smaller projects or capabilities, you always want to listen. You always want to be learning from others, whether you take their advice or not.
Yeah.
And my brother has this ability to just break me down where I'd be strong on it as anyone else would.
Yeah.
But we can get into these conversations that allow me to see it in a different way where normally I might have a brick wall up because I just believe in it so much.
So he
And
brings another like perspective and gets you to view it in a different kind of perspective or objective way.
exactly.
Got
Yeah,
it.
and I think it helps because we do overlap a lot in our vision, and so it's not coming from a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And you also have to think about as co-founders, my world is different than his. I'm focused on different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so getting his fresh eye on something that I've been thinking about for say months, well, usually we talk about, let's just say weeks. And then I bring him into the conversation from a very unique, he hasn't thought of this idea,
Mhm.
before. He can counter it or in most cases will work on top of each other. It'll inspire an idea that
Wonderful.
he'll come up with that inspires another one from me. That net is better than the original idea.
It compounds, it sounds like, and through
Exactly.
both of your different lenses on the
Yep. And
problem.
our launch next month is the catalyst of that. Like, what we're launching next month is not like any other product launch that's ever
Yeah.
been out there. It's
Wait,
very
you
unique
can't
and different.
I am so amped to know what this is about now. Are you able to, like, tease at all what this is? Like,
Well,
are you able to
the
tell at
campaign
all?
yeah, so the campaign, title and actually I haven't even told my brother yet. His name's Adam. I haven't told Adam yet, so he'll probably come back with a better idea, but this did
Why,
come
why,
from
why?
a conversation with him, is the campaign and kind of the direction we're going is think outside the box, and it's 2025. That you have to think outside the box if you wanna stand out, if you wanna do better, if you wanna grow
Yeah,
in
yeah,
every sense of everything that you do.
yeah,
Playbooks, they used to work, there's some factors, but you have to think outside the box and how can you take what has worked, what you haven't tried,
yeah,
work that in. And that's one of the biggest things in B2B marketing sales. And the reason why I'm here from, coming from film and television is I've never been inside a box. I've
yeah,
lived my entire life in
in
a
a cardboard
creative
box.
world, right? That's that. And I don't know how to just be inside of it. I can't just sit and
Yeah,
relax and be bored.
it's
I
just
have to
that's
be
not you.
that's a good one. So next month's launch is exactly that. It's we live and we breathe thinking outside the box, and it's something that we encourage our customers and clients to always do, and that's how you're going to excel. Obviously, if you have something that's working,
Yeah,
don't move it, don't change it until it doesn't. But you have to think outside the box. And how can you enhance it? How can you accelerate it? How can you do something different and new? And that's where my brain lives and everywhere it's going. And so all I think about is, for our launch, it can't be normal. It can't be a traditional webinar of here's our launch. It
Yeah.
can't just be a blog post. It has to be something
Different.
memorable for our audience,
Yeah.
and lives and breathes our vision.
That's so cool. I like that. The think outside the box, live outside the box sort of philosophy or ethos,
I don't
not
live
ju-
outside.
not just in a marketing campaign, but in your day to day, just how you even think about your product, your business, your customers, your problem solving.
You always have
Purple.
to be thinking out, no matter what you're doing, your brain has to be elsewhere at some, point of, at least, 10, 20 minutes out of your day. You have to be thinking of something completely different, whether it's, creative in your knitting, or you're outside, or I have a
Yeah.
patent on a spice dispenser, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
got bored in film and television, and I was thinking, what else can I do? I've got a 3D printer. Let's start making things. And I found we had a problem with, I had, always cleaning our measuring, spoons and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I came up with a cap, and I built it in 3D, and 3D printed it, and got a patent that it dispenses a different amount of,
Cool.
contents depending on how far you turn it. And then you
Yeah.
turn it back and it resets. And it
So cool.
was, and I'm doing this literally while my computer's rendering for,
Yeah.
music video, or the American Idol logo. In fact, it was the American Idol logo animation that was rendering in the background on my computer. And I walked over my office to the other corner where I had my 3D printer. And
Yeah.
while it was rendering the 4K, logo animation that's going to go on the new, for the new American Idol brand, I was 3D printing my spice dispenser and trying to engineer it for a patent.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
cool.
it's thinking in that way is
Okay.
just how I've applied my entire life in everything that I do. And I encourage that for everyone to,
That's so
it just
cool.
keeps you healthy and kind of on your toes.
So really, like, not just thinking outside the box, living outside the box, trying different
Living.
things, especially because as founders, you can get really into your very narrow niche thing. So I've always actually one question later I was going to ask, maybe it's
Yeah.
worthwhile to ask now is like, how do you balance the demands of being a founder, especially in the tech space, and the rest of your identities, which I feel like isn't talked about enough. But when I bootstrapped my first startup, I was working like 100-hour weeks. And I like knew that that would be what it would take for the first year. And I had mentally committed to it. But I realized I had to be very rigorous with time. I had to be like, okay, the only fun thing that I do is I go to the climbing gym. And I'm like, well, that synergizes with I'm extroverted. So I get to see people, I get to see my friends, my community, and I can invite people to come climb with me. And I'm still getting physical exercise. So it's like, hits a lot of things to maximize happiness points, going back to that theme. So that's how I dealt with it. But I am curious to always hear from other founders, like, how do you like balance, or is that a myth, or is that just like always a target?
It's, it's hard to sustain, right? And I'm probably not the best person. I know all the tactics, and I've tried them all, and they worked for a time. And what it comes down to is accountability, right? And
Mm,
for me,
yeah,
I have you know, uh, I'm fortunate enough to have my identical twin brother, and
yeah,
he cares about my health as much as our product, and hopefully more. And so he's always, he calls me up randomly throughout the day to say, did you stand up today? Right?
really?
Did you
That's
walk
what a
around?
deep lover. Wow.
Yeah, no,
Like, what a
well, that's the thing. I had to do it back to him, right? Because
wow.
I know what we're working on and what he's focused on. And if he's working on our integrations or something that's not sexy, I know it
Yeah,
can get to him real fast. He's
yeah, yeah,
fantastic at it, but
yeah,
where he thrives and his energy is better is when he's working on front end, client facing UI and functionality. And so,
yeah.
and I know when we're working on that, I have to keep checking on him to make sure that he's not,
Support and
overdriving himself.
girls. Yeah. That's that
Um,
that's cool. Okay. That makes a
yeah,
lot of that you'd be there for each other, like at that emotional level
it
to help
is.
people and
It's everything, and and so that's a huge part of his accountability. Where
yeah.
I've been the most productive for myself
Mhm.
is, and I highly recommend Miracle Morning, the book, because that changed my life. Right,
Yeah.
that when I read Miracle Morning, I was not a morning person. I was in film and television. I didn't need to be up you know,
Yeah.
before 9 or 10. I would work until 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always run the midnight oil, and I still do today, and I shouldn't be, but it's what I do. Because and that ties back to your early question of what I do for fun. I
Yeah.
love what I do so much that
Yeah.
that's the problem.
That is the
Is
fun.
I don't want to stop. Yeah.
You are.
And every project's different. When I'm working with different clients and telling their stories, they're all so different. So when I bring in another client, I just get excited about what I'm building for them, and it's so
That
fresh and
compliment.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's worked for me when it comes to something that's more, applicable to the audience here today is, Miracle Morning got me to shift my mentality. I never thought I was a morning person. I was like,
Yeah.
I was reading in the middle of the book. There's no way. End of the book, it challenged me and it said, tonight, I guarantee you tonight, you're not going to sleep because you're going to be so excited to wake up at 5 in the morning tomorrow. Guess what? I was up the entire night because I was so excited. I woke up at 5 with more energy than I had in months. 5
Wow.
a.m.
Yeah.
And I meditated. I wrote in my journal. I, did all the things that,
All the
everyone
things.
tells you to do.
Yeah.
And I had, a period from, the Miracle Mornings, from what I remember, is an hour of workout of, very regimented, every single day, even weekends. You just stick to it. You do not stop.
Very cool.
30 days, you get through it, and it's
Yeah.
your new self.
That's your
And
life.
I did that, and I switched to a 6 hour day. And I was the most productive I've ever been in 6 hours in a day, where I work
Yeah.
3 or 4 hours in the morning, hour lunch, 2 hours in the afternoon. And the best thing about this is that if you truly believe that 6 or 7 hours is the best output a human being can possibly put out in a given day,
Yeah.
and anything you do beyond that is going to compound significantly on your productivity the next day. It
Okay. Yeah.
forces you to be super present with
Yeah.
your family, with everything, because as soon as you start thinking about work,
Yeah.
you're hurting your tomorrow's productivity. And I
Yeah.
was the most present with my family. I was the healthiest. I was the most productive at work. And I'm starting again tomorrow. From this call,
Oh,
I got to get
you got
back
this.
into it. And I
Oh,
think
wow.
this
You
is
got
going to
this.
get me into it.
You got it, man. You got it. You're gonna be so excited tonight to wake up at 5 a.m.
There it is.
I'm
Let's
gonna
do it,
text.
Robert. You're going to join me, man. 5 a.m. We're calling each other.
Well, actually, I already do this. So what I wanted to comment on is I didn't read this book, but my inspiration was like Kobe Bryant when I was growing up.
Mhm.
I wanted to make the basketball team my first year of high school, didn't realize I was trash. And I was like, well, how do I get better? So I watched a bunch of like YouTube videos of NBA superstars. Kobe was one, and his work ethic is like legendary, right?
Yeah.
So he talked about how he gets up at 3, works out at 4.
Oh, it's the best.
But then people then he rests for a little bit, works out again at like 9, then rests a little bit, works out again at 2, and then same thing at like 6. It's just like the dude's just always working. So I thought, I'm not talented, but I could certainly work hard. So I'm gonna do that. So I started getting up every day in high
I love it.
school at 5, and I would go running and working out or playing basketball in the morning and training. And then the next year I like started on the team. And so that taught me, oh, okay, I could make up all my capability, talent gaps by just getting up early and just getting to work.
Oh, yeah. So that's where it turned into. I still get up at 5 every morning, but
Yeah.
I'm so excited. And this is just in the last few weeks. I'm
Yeah.
just been so excited about what we're launching in January
Oh,
and
yeah, in January, yeah.
partnerships and everything that's going on right now, that I'll get up at 5, but I'll get too excited. And instead of going down to the gym or actually like
Yeah,
doing the things that I should be doing, the me time, you know,
yeah.
uh, there's a period when I would just give myself 3 hours in the morning from 5 to 8
Mm,
that my phone's off. I'm working out, I'm reading, I'm meditating. I'm just I'm spending time
yeah,
with the kid before they go to school.
being
Um,
super present.
and being super present, and it's hard to balance when you love what you do so much, right?
Yeah.
You just want to be in front of that
When you
thing.
have that neurotic energy for the new like, the thing, like, I
Yep.
totally feel that.
So
It's
that's where
really
I'm
hard
at, but I need to. But
to
it's
turn it off.
healthier to get back into it.
It is good to have boundaries. Thanks for,
Yes.
sharing a little bit about that. I think these things aren't talked about as much as they should be. One thing I wanted to go back to when we went on the side quest about, boundaries and stuff, and you shared about accountability. being an accountability partner with your brother, having that emotional support and network, like that's really important. Thanks for sharing all that. One thing I wanted to go back to is when you went from co-founding the agency, got a lot of work in Hollywood, and then you were like, let's start a tech company. So you mentioned you had built up a lot of IP and tools to help with agency work. And then, there must have been discussions about like, well, what do we do with this? How do we get more leverage? How do we grow the business? What's our legacy that we want to leave? I'm guessing things like that. Those are the things I would be thinking about. So like, could you tell the story of like behind the scenes? How did ScreenSpace come to be? Like at that decision mark, like what were those conversations like with your brother and what made the decision?
Yeah, so this was back, I think we formed ScreenSpace, I think it was 2017. So we've been around. And for the first few years it was a side project. So it started off, we were bouncing full time, and this is kind of where this miracle morning, started to break down was,
Okay.
running to through these jobs, but I was still, in film and television, and the thought process was, we're running the agency, and I loved working with startups. I love,
Ooh,
I didn't have multiple cooks in the kitchen. We didn't have studio leads and executives that at the 11th hour would
yeah.
stop everything and say, wait, we have another show that's launching in a couple months
Okay.
with a similar design package. You guys need
Yeah.
to change it all up. And we had 4 days. It
Okay.
was, and yeah,
You
that's Hollywood life, right?
you
Um,
prefer geek customers instead. That's what it sounds
yes,
like.
and that's
Yeah.
what I love about working with startups is they're passionate about what they're doing. They
Yeah.
trust me in what I can design and build, and I love the idea of the audience again, like that challenge. And so when we would have startups that we would and tech companies that would come to us to build out their animations and promos, budgets were low. The turnaround times were fast. That's pretty normal. But budgets were a bit
Yeah.
higher in entertainment. But the
Yeah.
turnaround times were, we're used to
Yeah.
fast
Yeah.
fast
Yeah.
speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what we found was those customers that were asking for videos needed more. We didn't feel
Mhm.
like what they felt like they needed, which is what we do great, work of. We didn't felt like it was going to deliver what they actually needed for their buyers, for their
Okay.
audience. And so we wanted to, and at the time we felt, okay, they know their stories. They need to be able to churn out more content, better content that's catered to each buyer. And in order
Mhm.
to do that at cost, at a lower cost, we built toolkits in house so that we can plug and play as much as possible. We
Yeah.
found trends, we
Yeah.
found patterns. We built it into our toolkits. We'd render in the cloud
Yeah.
as that started building. And what we found was what we had designed in house to make everything faster for us, we could productize that and train our clients on how to use it so that they can
Yeah.
build their own videos
Self-serve.
themselves and upload it. It still uses the cloud, but it uses our templates. It uses our, we had we have a very good eye when it comes to 3D animation, lighting, camera
Mhm.
movements, all the little details. We were trained in
Yeah.
film and television,
Makes sense.
perfection is not good enough when you're in Hollywood. So that's where we're coming from.
Okay.
And we built that into our products so that they can start when our clients would come to us to hire us, we would push them into our product instead so that they can start using that. And we actually found ourselves using the ScreenSpace platform, which is called ScreenSpace Studio at the time. Um, to create our own content for our
Or
clients that would pay us more for a bigger, project.
cool.
Um, and that's kind of what the thought process was, we built something for us that was working well, but we felt like it was still limiting. And the limiting factor was the fact that we're the middleman and we don't need to be the
Yeah.
middleman. And if
Yeah.
we can equip our clients, the cost can come down for them. They can churn out more. We can scale it, and it's a win-win for everyone. And that's where we are with ScreenSpace today. Is that it's evolved, and there's a lot more to understand when it comes to storytelling and narrative design and building a story arc. That's not something that is just inside of a template. We do have a bunch of templates that have that, but
Yeah.
we've built a ton of interactive content and video content that trains and helps our clients understand narrative and storytelling and thinking outside the box. so that they can use our platform on their own, learn everything, become, better at this tool of
Yeah.
storytelling, which is one of these most powerful tools you could ever use in anything because it's so ingrained in your brain and it's been around forever and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Storytelling is is so powerful that I want to train people on how to use storytelling, not just use a product,
Yeah.
um, for an output.
On that, I love that transition and I love that story and background, like how you two as founders were just trying to make something that made your life easier to deliver a better customer experience. And then the learning and realization that, hey, if we productize this and get out of the way, we can actually provide more value to our customers and help them with the end goal, which is your brand is outside the box, your brand
Right.
story is outside the box. So that's so cool. That's a very cool arc in itself about ScreenSpace and how it came to be today. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And on this last note, you mentioned like we're hardwired for storytelling. That's not going away. So actually, I did have a question. Like humans are hardwired to respond to stories, emotionally, and from what I've read, biologically, even neurologically. I'm curious to know, because you're probably the most obsessed with stories guy that I've ever met. It makes sense because you're the CEO of this storytelling, immersive stories tool. So, and you come from this Hollywood background. So, how do you integrate those principles behind, like the science of storytelling, if you will, into the design of screen space and how it works to enable others to tell stories? Anything you want to talk about there? I
Yeah,
know that's a
yeah.
wide net, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it where it comes down to is everyone gets so focused on processes, on frameworks, on numbers, right? And they forget why we're all doing this, why we're here, right? And the core is to help someone. If you focus on money, you're going to get lost. If you focus on helping people, that's going to translate into more money than you can imagine. If you find a way that you can do it really, really well and scale that. And when it comes down to it, we're all here to help solve other people's problems. And really, tech became this whole like, Shark Tank where we're all just feeding off each other. We're helping you build your product, you're helping us build our product, and the product is for each other, right? Somehow we're getting money. And I don't know how that works. It's magic, but when it comes down to it, it's you're selling to people. They're human beings that if you strip away all the stuff, they're just humans, right? And they have problems that are frustrating them, that are keeping them up at night. And you need to find a way to help them if you care about their problem or you care about them, as a person, as an industry as a whole. You need to find a way to into that and focus on how can I help this person be better or resolve their problem or help them get some, further along in their journey. And if you focus on that, you're not selling a product. The product would be great. Your idea is you want to find the problem where your product is likely going to solve. But if you're focusing on that person, that human being, and if you imagine them as I love going back to the hero's journey and the whole idea of this person is uncomfortable in the space that they're at and they need to get to this promised land. They need to find this treasure that's going to unlock a whole new life. And it's a long journey. It's a hard journey to get there, especially today when your job's on the line, your reputation is on the line, your time. It becomes a lot more emotional when you're buying
higher
you know,
stakes.
software product than it used to be. If you boil it down to that idea of how can I help this person? Where do they want to get to? How can I help them get up on their feet and go the journey to get there? How can I motivate them and inspire them that it's worth it? The goal is worth it. And the journey is actually not that hard. And here are some other ways you can go, build that trust of it. And your solution may not be the right solution. I think the best salesperson is someone who has in the past more than once sold a different product than their own, pushed them in a different direction than their own when someone actually could have bought their product. That truly means that that sales rep understands the problem, understands that person, and that person is going to go back to them as soon as it's the right fit, right? And That's what it's about, and that boils down to storytelling. It boils down to what's hardwired in their mind, what's emotionally gonna get them to stand up on their feet and wanna go that distance. And it's not just emotional, it's the logical side. Storytelling works on both levels, and it's, especially with the way ScreenSpace is built, it's designed to start there, to start with that conversation, align on the problem and solution, not dive into the product like our product did a couple years ago, and some other similar product or solutions out there. Don't just show the sword and say, here, like figure it out. You gotta focus on, like, on the person
What's the
and
monster or what the dragon to slay?
slaying the dragon.
Yeah.
But you have to get them to believe in you. You have to be the guide that's going to help light the way to get to that promised land and show them how to get there and visualize that journey. And that's what ScreenSpace does, is it takes an abstract idea that's scary, that's hard, that's expensive, and we make it tangible and visual and warm and inviting to your buyers. And it's a creative process. It is a creative process. It's not, you can't just slap your product and a bunch of screens and a click through, throw it on your homepage and think, oh, they're going to touch and feel it, so they get it and they're going to buy our product. It has to be creative and it has to tell a story, and it has to be the path for that person. It can't just be, here's a product, here's the journey, right? Here's where you're going to go. You're going to see some other dragons. You're going to see some, drop offs and cliffs, but don't worry. This is your path. It's the best and easiest path. And guess what? I'm holding your hand the whole way there, right? And
I'm
that's
the
what we
guy,
do.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I love that position of like you need to show yourself as the guide and the person coming to your product, your website, your service, your company, your offering, whatever, as the hero. I think of it as like you want to be the Yoda to their Luke Skywalker. You want to make them feel like the Luke Skywalker.
You wanna be on the
Right.
same side of the table with them, right? You wanna
Yeah.
be looking out together. If you're on the other side of the table, you're selling. If you're sitting
Yeah.
right next to them and you're both looking out at all the options,
Yeah.
now you're their friend that they trust,
Yeah.
and they're gonna say, "Well, here's some ideas. You could go that way, but you're gonna here's the issues you're gonna come with that probably.
Yeah.
But have you thought about this other thing?" And align there. It's like, "Oh, actually, that does sound like it makes sense." And that's when you earn the right to say, "Oh, by the way, I just happen to have a product that can unlock that. Would you like to check it out?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point that and underscoring what you just said is like brand trust, credibility. And then part of that is empathy too. I think great stories have an emotional component because we're emotional. And you also mentioned, we're also rational. So I like how you couched it with like great stories can have both. It hits
Yep.
both sides of the brain, right? But I do think the emphasis on like, what's the emotional component? How do we like something that I always think about actually in entrepreneurship is what pain are we helping them avoid? Like, or what anxiety are we helping them avoid? Because people will pay for emotionally painful solutions, right? So that's something that I kind of think about.
That back to what we were talking about earlier, is that transformative moment, is
Yeah,
everything boils down to what's that transformative moment for that person of where they are today, where they need to be, that 5-second moment that's going to
yeah,
change that person. And
yeah,
everything else that you do, your product, your videos, everything else is all of it's there is it's only there to emphasize that 5-second moment that's going to transform that person.
yeah,
Um, so everything has to evolve around where they are today, where they want to get to, what's that future state. That's everything. And helping
yeah,
them visualize that. You could do it in so many different ways,
yeah.
but
And that's
the
the creative
story
component.
is the
Yeah,
transformation. And that
got it.
transformation is an emotional transformation, right?
Got it. No, I like that from a design philosophy perspective too. Like if you just told product teams like everything is about transforming their life and bringing a ton of value for this moment, concentrate on how to make that, and then, you could think about this in business terms, but time to value is just like get them there faster. Right.
Exactly. And actually, Robert, when I work with our clients to find that moment and build these stories,
Yeah.
in many cases, they'll actually find a flaw in their product and say, well, instead of
Mm,
fabricating this to tell the story better on our website and for our demos, we should be changing the product to have this moment in product. So when they actually
yeah.
go through, they feel it, not just And so in many cases, they'll actually move that down
So they'll
funnel
actually
in a
shift
different
their
product.
design philosophy, like, for
Absolutely. Because
narrative.
products will also have to think like you're saying, Robert, it's spot on. Product
Yeah,
teams are also storytellers.
totally.
The actual
Totally.
product itself is the story. And
Yeah,
marketers should be able to just convey what the products team has done in the storytelling to just
yeah,
say, here's the story. Doesn't it usually
totally.
goes the other direction. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But eventually one day everybody will be PLG and we'll get there in a panacea. But
we'll get
um,
there. There'll always be sales assists, all those sales
there will
reps that
be.
are listening in. You're not your job's not going away. You just have to be strategic
Yeah,
because people, and it's not your fault, it's not your product's fault. Just it's people in general. The way the world's going, the way with AI, it's all about instant gratification. We all know it. We don't want to go through a whole long sales
totally.
process. So it's
Yeah,
just naturally people are going to want PLG and they're only going to accept PLG down the road. And and it's all about, again, motivation. If you can motivate someone to hop on a call with you at any point in that
yeah.
funnel, that's everything. And it's just
That,
finding what is it that's going to trigger them to want to be in front of a person.
that's such a great framing of that. It's all about that part, which is the conversion of at some point of your funnel. And then when teams arm themselves with that thinking of like, we got to have a cohesive narrative around that to increase that conversion rate. That makes a lot of sense. So I know we're coming up on time. I'm thinking there's like two questions that I really want to ask if you got some extra time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation. I love talking about storytelling
You're,
and hanging out
yeah.
with you, Robert.
It's always fun to chat, man. It's always fun to chat. We could talk endlessly. So, two questions. As we were just talking about how, AI is disruptive and, sales assist, and we're kind of talking about the future. What do you think storytelling looks like in the year 2525? It's just a super out there question, but like, if you just cast vision to as an oracle, maybe your Yoda in the future, the Yoda of storytelling, what does that look like to you in 2025? Like, I'm
It's a great
I'm
question. And it's what's funny is when it applies to storytelling, like I can see it in any other context, it can be a much more complicated question.
Mhm.
Storytelling is not going to change. You look centuries in the past, and storytelling, as its core, the structure, the arcs, that's never changed, and it won't change. It's
Mhm.
that's what's hardwired. So it's going to be a lot of evolution to get that out of your head. What is going to change is people are going to be leaning into that muscle of
Yeah.
storytelling. And when it comes to selling and marketing down the road, it's all going to be content. I you know, down the road, I think and not even that far down the road, even right now, we're working on some content with some clients. Is brands are going to be building, you know, movies like short form films. You're seeing that all in like the short form content
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
social right now, and that's just an easy way to produce content and great. But everything storytelling interweaves between everything that we're doing, and companies are going to get a lot more creative in leveraging that storytelling and building those emotions. And so that's going to translate into interactive content, into new formats of video that are
Yeah.
not just linear static video. You know, it all kind of revolves around screen space, right? So, whatever I think storytelling is going down the road, we're going to be building that functionality in the
Mhm.
screens first to
Yeah,
test it out.
hopefully ScreenSpace is in 2020 or 25, 25, helping, set the thought leadership for telling stories. I like how you put that, which is the storytelling psychologically, it's hardwired in us that will take a lot of evolution to change, and it probably wouldn't be for the better, so there it would likely not happen. But then, the medium or how it's applied might change. I'm kind of curious to intersect this with the different topics. So obviously in like startup, like in business, being an entrepreneur, founder, a lot of it is like finding market fit, right? And then after you find product market fit, then you work on scaling and getting more leverage. So I actually there's lots of tactics around this, but when I type in some story like, hey, there's this target persona, go to market team. I am thinking of building this kind of solution that solves these problems, their internal problems, their external problems, their philosophical problems. Create some diagrams in a high fidelity app that I could send to a customer to test out to give me feedback. And then, like, what if I could do that in a morning and then have the app out and it's being prototyped live and somebody's testing it. And I basically think about how these tools that we're coming up with, especially with Gen AI, could help us experiment at a much faster rate.
Yeah.
Or what are your thoughts about that in general? Like, do you have a different perspective, similar perspective, or
Yeah. When it comes to creativity, there's, when it comes to AI, creativity is still absent, right? It's getting
yeah,
better. But what it comes down to, and the reason why creativity is so important going down the road, is that's what differentiates you from AI. So AI
mm,
is a fantastic tool. Of course, I've built a bunch of stories, especially bedtime stories with my kids using
yeah,
AI, and you can really get it dialed in, and it's fantastic if you do the right prompts and you're modifying it the way you need to. It's great at bite-sized storytelling on LinkedIn, and social, and it's effective. Um, as AI evolves and it knows story arcs.
yeah,
Again, it's in anything it's scanning, there's story in it. So it
yeah,
knows the story arcs. It knows it, you know, it used to be too spot on where it would just be like very obviously, what the arcs are. So over
yeah,
time, it's going to get better. It's going to get more emotional. And I think where it's all about standing out. And as if you're the first to start using that, it's going to be, and you dial it in with the right prompts to tell the right stories, and you can translate it into a medium that is easily digestible by your audience, and that's something that actually does motivate them, then it's going to be fantastic.
mhm,
And it's
mhm,
going to work well. The problem is when you get 20 companies using the same technique, all doing the same thing to the same person. Now, all of them are trying to emotionally charge this poor buyer,
yeah,
to tell a story, and they're all effective.
and
They're still not going to know what to do, and so they're likely not going to buy anything.
okay,
They're going to deal with the problem,
and that's where
and the
standing
only
out
way you're going to
matters.
good.
That's where standing out matters, like the creative.
Diversity matters, and it's not just the you know right now, AI can't predict the future. You can ask it to, and it'll kind of work off patterns and trends. But when you're using this content and it's trying to break the status quo. Like AI is always going to be status quo. So
Yeah,
you have to take what it's giving you as this is what everyone else is doing today. And you have to find new ways to translate that. And that's where, like you're saying, Robert, medium is everything. It's not
yeah,
going to create an entirely different medium or idea or a different way to convey storytelling that hasn't been done in the past. You can
yeah,
try to get it to, but it's going to get weird.
yeah,
And that's where with ScreenSpace, granted, it'll start, scanning ScreenSpace more to understand what we're doing, but it's not gonna be able to produce a whole different medium and technique to convey storytelling, even though it will and is really good at the actual message that goes into it and the arc that goes into it.
yeah. The novelty, I think, will come out of like AI, hybrid, human innovation. It's similar to how I think about. I was reading a book on copywriting, and they talk about how all writing is not really novel because you've read other things, you've integrated that, synthesized it, and then you wrote a new thing. So you take that concept, like you said, AI will always ever be status quo because it's the intelligence that we give it, unless other things change, of course. I don't know, maybe cool innovations and stuff. But understanding that core principle, then it's really what do the humans do on top of this new technology to innovate and create novel mediums? One
And
last
what
question.
makes you
Oh,
well, with that and is your POV. Your
yeah,
POV not be, copied by AI, and it
yeah,
won't be
yeah,
copied by your competitors. If
yeah,
it's your actual POV and your personality, it's something that helps you stand out, immediately,
yeah,
and it's something they're not gonna wanna copy because it's not who they are. That's not their
yeah.
personality. They
The
can try,
interaction.
but they're not gonna live it. So
Yeah,
POV is everything moving forward in how you can differentiate from anything else. And so POV is the number one thing that I'm focused on right now for myself for ScreenSpace. We have
yeah,
a very strong POV coming from film and television. So we're very unique in our experience. Unlikely another company is going to pop up similar to ours with someone
yeah,
with 20 plus years in film and television, but you never know.
Yeah.
So that's ingrained in who we are, and ScreenSpace is birthed from our POV
Uh,
versus trying to find a product and then trying to, match a POV to it. So you
yeah.
have to think about who you are as a person, what you actually believe, and that's always going to be unique, even if you have an identical twin.
Yeah.
So
Well,
from my
as we've
experience,
done, as we've done more. That's great. I also agree. I had another question here about creator economy. Maybe we could touch on that for a sec. But
yeah,
I think in this world where we democratize creation of content, then it does become like creative, which is the edge or the way that you innovate and stand out or be outside the box. And then the other thought that I had this year was, okay, let's say everybody in the world, 8 billion people could be creators. How does everybody stand out? And then I came to this concept. I'm curious as to your thoughts, but like that everybody's a snowflake in a way, right? And so accentuating the differences of what makes you very unique and very different. That is how you stand out. That is your differentiator as a personal brand. And then bleeding that into, the work brand or startup brand or company brand or product brand. And the other thought that I had was even though we're all snowflakes, snowflakes are all made of water. And so we're all humans. So like, emotional connection. We all desire that feeling like we belong. We desire that feeling autonomy. We desire that. So there's all these like intrinsic motivators or things that make us human that go into, you know, telling stories, but the stories to be told from your unique point of view is unique, right? That's your own thing. So that's a
it
thought
is.
that I heard earlier would be.
It is, and I think it's the theme across your stories that helps you build an audience that's unique to you. And it's not the stories. The stories aren't about the car crash. It's not about the big explosion, the big moment, the big shift. It's about what changed in you that came, who you were that come out of it. I saw your post a few days ago about
Oh yeah.
your experience with close to death experience,
Wow.
and
Yeah, yeah.
if your post was just about the accident and that was it,
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
story. No one's gonna,
Uh-oh.
you've heard it before,
Yeah.
you've seen it in a movie. They
Yeah.
can't relate to it. But what they
Yeah.
can relate to was how you changed, what changed in you internally,
Mhm.
and your perspective in life coming out of it. And
Yeah.
that's the moment that people remember. They don't remember the accident. They remember the big explosions unless they've actually done it themselves. It's not gonna, and been through that. It's
Yeah.
not gonna resonate, but they
Yeah.
can, but that can, and again, it comes back to that transformative moment
Yeah.
where you changed coming out of your experience, Robert. That moment everyone can relate to. Everything
Mhm.
else just emphasizes that moment and provides context around it and helps
Yeah.
everyone visualize going through it with you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the POV and being, snowflakes,
Yeah.
what you are and when it comes to the content, if you're talking about just what happened to you,
For sure.
that's not gonna resonate. It's what
Mhm.
happened to you from that,
And
right? And
okay.
and if people start talking about that, that's when your snowflake begins to take shape. And yeah, you
Yeah.
don't need millions of followers to make a
Yeah.
living, to be happy.
No.
I think what you
Yeah.
do need to be conscious of moving forward, because POV and your story, your personal story, and your personal experience is so raw, which is what makes it so real and what makes it so
Yeah.
attractive to other people because they want to learn from your experience, is the downside of people judging you or not believing that your
Yeah.
your story is real. And that's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things. If you actually gone through a transformation and something did happen to you and someone says,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, there's no way that
Yeah.
happened to you, right? But it
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, it defined who you are.
Yeah.
Those things can be really hard to stomach. And the more you get yourself out there, the more you're
Yeah.
exposing that. And it's important. And then I think mental health is only going to be more and more
Yeah.
big
Oh my
moving
God.
forward, as you you have to grow by putting yourself out there, but by putting
Yeah.
yourself out there, you can get, kind of
Yeah,
crushed by.
and then for her, it tests her ego and these other things. Yeah, it's important to stay grounded. Actually, yeah. Do you want to give a quick blurb on mental health? I actually think that's also not talked about enough in entrepreneurship life. But
Yeah,
one quick, like thing for me was I've been going to therapy for like 8 years, and I think being a founder, it's so up and down. Like it's so up and down. And the ability to regulate emotions, especially if you're the leader of the team, is super important. That's what I found. I'm curious as your thoughts on mental health, because you mentioned it.
it is hard and it's not for everyone. I think that's one thing, especially when it comes to mental health, is there's only so much therapy and outside support you can get if you're in an area, a field, a space
Agreed.
is just your physical biological makeup is not conducive to, right? And and it takes a lot of training to get into the startup world. A lot of people will get into startups early, but you're training the opposite way. It's like, getting thrown into an ocean and you have to, to save your life, you have to swim to an island and you're
Yeah.
going to get stronger and stronger as you're going, but then it's going to you're just going to collapse. And
Wait.
I think the biggest thing is finding those moments, those signals that either say, get help. And if it's a little more surface level and something you can contain,
Yeah.
therapy. But if
Yeah.
it's something that's that's weighing too much on you where it's becoming, very detrimental to your health, your mental
Yeah.
health especially, there's so many other opportunities. There's so many different startups, there's different founders that you can work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And you have to, you need, again, it comes back to accountability. You can't always see it yourself. And that's why mental health
That's
is
true.
such a big issue.
Yeah.
It's,
Can't live.
working with your family. My wife so this is a great story is when I met my wife and we hit it off and we kind of started dating. I told her, if we're gonna move forward, you have to know that I work long hours.
Yeah.
This the Hollywood
It's life.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
I love it, and this is what I do. But if I have additional pressure, I'm not gonna be able to do what I do. I've kind of conditioned myself where I can do this. I can work these hours. I've got the right balance. Things are great,
Yeah.
but this is how that's gonna be. And so that's one. And then two, I need you to keep an eye on me, right? Make sure that this is not a healthy industry. Hollywood is not healthy. And a big reason, one of the other big reasons why I switched to startup life, which is also not healthy. But, she's always been that, that person
Accountability partner.
watching and
Supporting.
making sure I'm eating my lunch and I'm taking those
Yeah.
breaks. And my brother, of course, as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
um, it's important. It's everything, and it's only going to get harder as we all move forward. So I'm not a normal person. I am built for this startup world. I've been doing startup, and running my own agency since high school.
Yeah.
And so I can do a lot of things that a lot of people would never want to or can't do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm better for that. There's a lot of reasons why I wish I wasn't and I had that balance, but,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
everyone's different. Everyone's,
We are
made
different.
differently, and
Yeah.
you have to be true to who you are, not what people are posting on social or what other people are saying, because
Oh,
everyone's
that's
different.
so true too. Yeah, that's so true too. Like, because you can't compare yourself to everybody else's highlight reels, right?
Right.
Um, One last question, because I know we're at time. This has been such a wonderful conversation,
We'll
though.
make it a 2-hour podcast.
This bad, dude. We just
Let's
go.
see who
Let's
sticks around.
4 hours. Okay, so this has been great to hear about your personal growth and your life and your career, and going from Kanye West videos all the way to democratizing storytelling for startup founders and technologists. That's so cool. That's such an arc. And thanks for taking me through that and going to all these different side quests too on like mental health, like how the human brain works with storytelling, what the year 2025 looks like. So I'd love to end on just like a reflective note. If you could talk to your 18-year-old self, and I know you've been running this agency since high school, so maybe even a little before that, maybe 14, or if you could talk to them in a 30-minute conversation, let's say you're grabbing coffee or something, what are three things you would tell them? Or just like spitball, whatever, learnings you've had that you think would be impactful to, 14, 15-year-old Darren.
That's hard because who I am today is because of my journey, and every single step I took in the path brought me to today. I couldn't do what I'm doing today or know what I'm knowing if I didn't take those paths, that path. I think what one of the biggest things that I would emphasize to myself is, again, going back to stay thinking outside the box, or or encouraging myself to think outside the box earlier. It's something I've done my entire life, but that's where you're gonna shine, and that's where you're gonna stand out from others and come up with some ideas that no one's ever thought of. And I've always been like that, but I think I could have started earlier and got more creative in not just what I do as a living, but other things in life that are out there that that are beyond your vision when you get so focused on your day-to-day routine and your processes.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, going back to the mental health, like sticking to prioritizing my
Miracle morning. Yeah.
with that.
Miracle morning. Prioritize that.
Miracle
Don't lose.
morning, miracle
Yeah.
morning. I've always believed that, like, you have to grow yourself in order to do the same for others. You
Yeah.
have to focus, and
So
you
true.
always have to come first, or you're not gonna be able to provide as much as you want to others.
Yeah.
Um,
So true.
and so that's been a theme throughout my life, and something that I would, emphasize again for my younger
Yeah.
self. And I think the third is, we and this has been ingrained in my brain, and I've been trained and calibrated for perfection just from coming from the Hollywood world.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I would tell myself is that, especially when you're outside of, the executives, studio execs looking at your work,
Yeah.
anything outside that, don't strive for perfection. Strive for growth, right?
Everything
And
else. Yeah.
I've failed at that, in that I translate perfection into everything else I do. I overthink a lot of what
Yeah.
I do. Our product doesn't grow as fast as it can because I want it to be so perfect for our customers.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot better at that, and, getting it out and shipping faster. But that's one thing, is perfection is never attainable.
Yeah.
Um, and, except unless you're a studio exec, and that's what you
Yeah.
think is possible. But outside of that, it's not about perfection. And if it's in the world of storytelling, it's about your audience. If they need perfection, that's one thing. If they don't, give them what they need. And
Yeah.
that's emotion, that's the right message, it's help, you know. And I think that's what I would tell myself back then, is
I
just
love.
focus on
Yeah.
what matters.
Thanks for sharing that. I like the last thing, like thinking about, perfection is a moving target. It doesn't exist, right? Progress is attainable. And it goes into a thought I've had, which is there are use cases for being a perfectionist, and then there are use cases for not.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to go into a VC pitch meeting, maybe perfect the crap out of your pitch, like things like that. But otherwise, just meeting a need is progress over perfection.
Yeah, and
I love it.
speed is a big thing
Yeah,
in startup world.
totally.
It's as valuable as quality.
Yeah,
And so, and you can't give up quality, and quality not just being the visual quality, but the quality of the message, is
yeah,
super
yeah,
important. But it's
yeah,
about, you have to do both. You have to have quality, and you have to have speed. If you have the money, that's the third the third step that you gotta toggle on as well.
totally. Yeah,
But if you don't have it, you have to get that's where you think outside the box, and that's where ScreenSpace came from, is
yeah,
how can you get ship fast, but have the highest quality content possible in whatever medium it is, but be able to ship that fast. And it's not just doing it faster, or working into the night to do it. It's
yeah,
getting creative on, what other ways can I produce this content that is just as relevant to my audience, that they can absorb it fast, I can produce it fast, and it's just as high quality. And
that's awesome.
sometimes it's
Yeah,
just the sprinkle of unique.
yeah,
Something that's delivering a message slightly different is everything to bring in something that's quality and new, that you can ship fast, if you can just think of what is that thing.
I'm excited to see what the January launch is about because I could tell that there's a lot of these elements there. I could tell you've been thinking
It's
about
gonna be
this a
cool.
long.
January 14th.
Okay, mark your calendars, everybody,
There
for
it
January
is,
14th. One
14th.
one thing I
It'll be
want to
a
leave
launch
on,
week, but
yeah, one thing I want to leave on. You mentioned, that perfection isn't real. Like progress is better than perfect. And then another thing that you mentioned, which got me thinking about a quote that I've been living by recently about, you know, out of the box thinking and being kind of an outlier. I've been thinking about this quote recently. Maybe you would resonate with it. Normal thinking and normal execution brings normal results. Outlier thinking and outlier execution brings outlier results. And so that's what I try to aspire to. And then as you were
what
talking
are
about
you doing, Robert?
perfectionism, as you were talking about perfectionism, I was like, this is probably why I get along with Darren so well, because this is me. This is my life.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just yeah, that's why our conversations is, we have the, fantastic chats is that we just
Totally.
riff off of
Yeah.
ideas that no one else is talking about, and
Yeah.
it just inspires more, and that's what I live and thrive. I just love doing that, and I
Yeah.
love and everyone's capable of it, and that's the key, is
Yeah.
everyone is capable of not being normal, and that is what you need to be today.
Totally. 5
And
a.m. tomorrow. Everybody that's
climbing up
listening, I'm in
and it's as
tomorrow.
easy as, like, figuring out your POV, that
Yeah.
makes you not normal, that makes you
Yeah.
you,
Yes.
and it's thinking outside the box of what else can I be doing to be healthy? What else
Yeah.
can I be doing for my product, for
Yeah.
marketing, for my customers
Yeah.
that's different, that, no one's ever thought of, and we can put in a motion and see if it works. But I live my life breaking the rules to see what happens, and I encourage
I
everyone
love
else
it.
to do the
That's
same.
awesome, Darren. That's awesome. Thanks for that message. We'll close out here. Thanks everybody for listening to the pod. Thank you, Darren, for joining us and giving us your life and career journey all the way from Hollywood to startup land and tech and helping everybody tell better stories. It's been wonderful to have you, man. Hope
Thanks
you
for
have a
having me.
yeah. Take care,
Anytime.
dude. All right, cool. Stopped the recording.